Hi, everybody. I am Lauren Rosen. I'm a digital media reporter for the Philadelphia 76ers. I have been with the Sixers for 2.5 great years, and in that time, I've had the opportunity to work with most of the women on this panel. I'm really excited to hear from all of them. I'm excited for you to hear from all of them. So without further ado, what I want to do is make sure that everyone gets a chance to introduce themselves, tell us a little bit about their background, how they got to the role that they're in today, and then we'll have a little conversation. So if everybody's ready, I'm going to just go around the horn. Instead of me introducing you guys, I'm going to let you introduce yourselves. I think people tend to introduce themselves better than other people can. So Annelie, if you don't mind starting, tell us who you are, your role, and maybe a little bit of background about how you got here.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having us. I adore all the women that are on this call, so this is very exciting. My name is Annaliese Mattel. I'm the VP of Player Development for the 76ers. This is my third season with the team, and prior to this, I was with the Oakland Raiders when they were still in Oakland for 4 years doing player engagement there, and my main responsibility throughout my career has always been to advocate for the well-being of our athletes and players and make sure that they're taken care of in sort of all facets of their on and off court or on and off field lives.
Thank you, Annelie. Elizabeth, do you mind doing the same?
Sure, of course. Elizabeth Berman. I'm the Chief People Officer. I grew up in Wilmington, Delaware, and very devoted 76ers fan. So thrilled to be here and be amongst just an amazing group of women. I navigated my career mainly, I would say, by taking risks and leaning in and just seizing moments to lead, even if it was slightly outside of my comfort zone. Started my career actually running restaurants and sort of landed in human resources by really raising my hand and asking if I could explore opportunities in HR, and had a boss, and he really was an advocate for me. And even though I did not have HR experience outside of managing the restaurant and being an employee advocate and a coach and recruiter for our team, he was willing to be a voice for me and spoke up and asked the head of HR at the time of the restaurant company I worked with to connect with me. And she interviewed me for an open position, and that really landed my first role in HR. So since then, I've spent about 20 years working across multiple industries, both in talent management and also in HR generalist roles. And I would say the thread that's tied all of them together is really being a very consumer product experience facing, businesses. And I love being here, right? Today, I think it plays to the greatest of my career and just offered me a really great opportunity to architect for one of the fastest growing companies in sports and entertainment.
Amazing. Thank you. Brittany, do you want to go next?
Sure thing. Brittany Boyd, Senior Vice President of Marketing for the Philadelphia 76ers. And I started my career in sports really, really early. Technically, I would call it in college. I was a track and field student athlete, and I was appointed to the Student Athlete Advisory Committee for the NCAA. And in that role as like a national representative, I would go to Indianapolis every year. We would vote on legislation for student athletes. We would plan championships and events and community engagement events. And so that really opened my eyes. And I was like, wow, this is actually like a career in sports off of the field or court or track. And so when I decided to get my MBA, I was really intentional about which school I chose. And I chose the University of Texas, Arlington, because it's in close proximity to the Dallas Cowboys, the Texas Rangers, and the Dallas Mavericks. And I was like, I'm going to stalk everyone in this city until I get an internship. Luckily, I didn't have to do that. I landed an internship with the Dallas Cowboys. I'm from Dallas, so it was like the most amazing dream, first job. And from there, it's just been, a whirlwind. From Dallas, I went to Brooklyn and helped to open Barclays Center, and I was with the Brooklyn Nets for 3 seasons. And then I joined our HBSC family, first with the New Jersey Devils, and now with the Philadelphia 76ers. And I'm just so thrilled to be here. Thank you for having me. And to echo what Annelie said, like just fortunate that we get to work with such amazing women across our organization. It really is refreshing and really, really awesome to just have one another to lean on.
I agree. Thank you. Katie, do you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Katie O'Reilly. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer for the Philadelphia 76ers. So in my role, I oversee really everything that brings in the money. So ticket sales, sponsorship, partnership solutions activation. It is my 8th season, I think, now with the team. And I actually started in business development, spent some time. I actually oversaw marketing for the past 5 years, and then recently moved back over to the revenue side. My career, I think similar to Brittany, was one of those that was like, oh, I graduated college and had a lot of internships in college and was like, I'm going to work in sports. I want to do sports marketing. And I had literally no idea what that meant. And just, I love how Elizabeth really framed up her career with a theme. And I would say, similar to her, mine was about sort of going outside my comfort zone and saying yes to opportunities that come your way and being very open-minded, along with like really capitalizing on the power of your network, and maintaining relationships and finding great people who will be your champion. Especially now. So, I mean, my second job in sports was working for Scott O'Neill and Chris Heck, the CEO of HBSE and president of the Philadelphia 76ers, and then went off and sort of did my own thing for a couple of years, but they remained sort of my people, my mentors who I called, and, come right back around, and they said they were moving to Philadelphia and taking over the Sixers and that I should come with them. I'm from Philadelphia as well. So it's one of the most amazing places to work. The most amazing people, as you can see from this panel. So thank you for having me as well. And I'm excited to dig in with this crew. It's a great way to start the week.
I agree. Carmen, last but certainly not least, can you give us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, thanks, Lauren. My name's Carmen Colomer, so I'm the, the Director of Sports Science at the Philadelphia 76ers. This is my first season with the team. I've just moved over from Australia, if you can't pick up the accent. So my career started, 10 years ago or so when I was doing my bachelor degree, and in sport anyway in Australia, you need to do a lot of unpaid work. So I guess similar to what a few other of these women were saying, with it, you sort of capitalize on your networks and you sort of say yes to opportunities. And I think that really helped me sort of progress, and starting in Olympic sports to rugby union, then to rugby league, and then sort of continuing my education. I'm currently just completing my PhD, and to now where I'm obviously heading up the sports science department here, where I sort of look at a lot of the objective data and provide that information to all of the athlete care department to hopefully make better decisions, to make sure we've always got, a very athlete focused, sort of getting the most out of them, but really looking after them as best as possible.
Amazing. Thank you guys for those intros. My hope for this panel is that we can dive a lot deeper into the paths that you've journeyed and the things that you do today. But just to zoom out a little bit, the theme of this panel is Women's History Month and the people that have inspired us to get to where we are today. So if we look at a historical lens, if we start really broad, and then we're going to get a little more nitty gritty later on, I'm hoping you guys would be willing to share female role models, whether they're people that historical figures, living, past, anybody that's inspired your journey, whether honestly, maybe someone that you don't know, someone that you've just looked up to from afar, a historical figure in honor of Women's History Month. Brittany, I see you nodding. I'm wondering if you can start with this one.
Sure. So one quote that I love, and I like that quote made me research her more. And I don't know a ton about her, but there's a quote that I absolutely love from Eleanor Roosevelt, and it's, "No one can make you feel inferior without your consent." And when I heard that, it just became like a mantra that I would use with mentees and other ladies in the industry, and even people of color in the industry, because there's so many things that like go into our mind when we think about the standard or even the representation that we see across industries or within our own industry. And so that quote really stuck with me. And then as I researched her, she also was an advocate in the 30s and a woman that really used her voice for good about racial equity and fall forward in that way. And so for all of those reasons, I put her at the top of my list, along with many, many others. But that is a quote that I think about all the time, that I share with others and encourage them to really think about and apply to their own careers and life in general.
There's definitely a reason we all work together, Lauren. She was on my list as well for a lot of the same reasons. She, to what Britt said, right? She was considered super controversial at the time that she was leading, and she was really transformative in terms of the fact that like she was willing to use her voice when, you know, when she was the first lady in our White House. And even later on, after she left, she went over to the United Nations and was like a voice and an advocate for many, which was completely unheard of, you know, in terms of being a female leader at the time. And one of my favorite things that she has done, and it's like, to me, a large part of the legacy that she's left behind is the Universal Human Declaration of Rights, which continues to serve as a model for how people and nations around the world treat each other. And so I just think of like, what an incredible legacy to leave behind, the fact that you're someone who has literally changed how people treat each other.
Other historical figures?
Yeah, I'm gonna jump in and I'm gonna flip this on its head to keep it interesting. Obviously, Elizabeth's right. There's a reason we all work together. Of course, she's on my list. So I'm gonna go current day. And because I think at the same time, like as our lives and careers change, you're inspired by different people along the way. People that I've just like been looking at recently. You look at someone like Whitney Wolfe Herd. I don't know if you're familiar with her. She's the CEO and founder of Bumble. She's a lot younger than I am. They just IPO'd. So Bumble just went public. She's a self-made billionaire and she's like sitting there at the desk while her company goes public with her little baby on her hip. And I'm like, that is badass. So she's awesome. So people like that, you know, I think I look to different folks every day. We had a meeting literally last week where Scott, our CEO, had us read an article on Serena Williams, talk about like a badass mom. So I think it's a lot, you know, clearly that's where I am in my life. I have 2 young boys under 2.5. So I'm finding inspiration from these women who are just like kicking butt and keeping young humans alive. But I think you can find inspiration and from different people throughout your career and throughout your life.
I would second that. I'm kind of going with Katie's theme of like finding somebody current in our lives. And for me, it's Felicia Horowitz. She's a philanthropist in the Bay Area. And a lot of people know her because her husband is Ben Horowitz, who is an amazing philanthropist and venture capitalist, mostly for Andreessen Horowitz. And he's great and he's amazing human being. But Felicia to me is sort of the rock star in that family. And if you're on Clubhouse, she has made that app like go crazy. Her virtual dinner parties are attended by just about anybody. But what I love most about her is that she's such a connector and she really connects people from all walks of life. So whether it's, you know, people from sports, people from prison reform, people from entertainment in general, arts, she brings everybody together and creates this environment where everybody feels like they have a voice and they can learn from one another. And so this is even pre-Clubhouse days. The collection of people that she introduces to one another make for a really special moment and a really special like network in general. And I've always appreciated it about her. I've never met somebody that can move so effortlessly between, you know, her philanthropy and who she gives back to then connecting sort of all these different people from different walks of life. And it feels normal. It doesn't feel staged. It just feels meant to be, and what comes out of it is really special. And I've admired her for a really long time, and seeing her doing it now on this stage of Clubhouse that really millions of people get to see it all the time is amazing. So she's sort of my person that I look up to probably the most.
I love that answer. Thank you guys all for sharing these with me. I want to get a little bit closer now to home. Carmen, I don't know, have you ever had a female role model in your life, a woman that you've worked with and looked up to personally that we could add to the conversation?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, I think we're all here because we all work in a male-dominated industry, so there haven't been too many, which is unfortunate in one sense. But I have had a couple. So at the Australian Institute of Sport, there was Shona Howson. So she is just pioneered the way for women in sports science, and she is really an expert when it comes to, say, recovery and so on. And I think she was someone I always looked up to, and you know, I've been fortunate enough to co-author some papers with her, and you know, she just I feel like she just doesn't hold back, and she doesn't let any glass ceiling sort of limit her from having her say and really sort of progressing the world of sports science just because she's a woman. So I'd definitely say she was a huge, at least inspiration for me, and somewhat of a mentor.
Perfect. I have had a similar experience. It's hard to have female role models in a male-dominated space. I certainly have plenty of role models, but I personally have never reported directly to a woman. And I think that that's interesting and hopefully changing as time moves along. Katie, I know you have an interesting perspective on this topic. It's important to talk about the men that we've reported to that have done a phenomenal job. So I don't know if you would be willing to share a little about that.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think it's a question probably a lot of us get a lot, you know, very often. Who are your female mentors? Who did you look up to? Look, I think we're very lucky. I mean, look at this panel. Like, we are surrounded by amazing female leaders at HBSE, and within each, you know, team and property and organization. That's definitely not everywhere you go. And so I think, you know, I'm asked all the time, like, female role models, female leaders, female mentors. And I don't think it's a problem to say, you know, a lot of my mentors were males. Mine in particular, my mentors in my career were like incredible male executives who supported me and helped me get to where I am and championed, you know, me and my success. And I think that's equally as important. And they deserve credit too for, you know, helping us along the way. So look, I don't think, especially in an industry where it is male dominated, and hopefully we see that's changing. You know, I don't necessarily think you have to have a female mentor. It's really important, you know, as Brittany said, to just see the representation, and hopefully everyone at this table is helping that. So, you know, you can do it. And by the way, if you don't see the representation, you still can do it, and you should be one of the first. But, you know, I really do think it's equally as important or okay to have mentors that are male. You know, I did, and they certainly helped me get where I am today, and were the people that I called throughout my whole career. As I said earlier, my two bosses today are the people that hired me when I was 22, and they've helped me get to where I am. So I think both are equally as important and helpful.
I would just add, because I totally agree with Katie, but I also would say that a mentor doesn't have to be someone who you report to, and it doesn't have to be someone that is a higher level in your career. Like, peer mentorship is real. And obviously we're surrounded by a lot of ladies in our organization. So you can find a mentor, because I do think it's important to find a female mentor, right? It doesn't have to be someone who's ahead of you in your career, just so they understand some of the things that you and some of the challenges that you may face as a woman in this industry, and to have someone as a sounding board and to give you advice of what they've done and what's worked for them, and someone who just understands, right, like what you're going through firsthand. So I think peer mentorship is equally important, just finding someone that you can vent to, that can be your sounding board, that can give you really great advice on how to move forward through an issue or challenge that you might be facing during that time. I have a ton of peer mentors that I've leaned on, and we've grown together in our careers over time. And then I think, you know, sponsorship is real too. Like, every male that has helped me along the way, they're not necessarily like my mentor. Like, I don't tell them my full life story and like tell them every problem that I face, but I know that they're in my corner and that they're rooting for me, and that they're in the rooms that I might not be in, championing me and my career and pulling me along the way, which I appreciate so very, very much. So when I look at it, I just look at it in kind of like two different buckets. Like, I definitely have mentors that like I will sit there and like tell my whole life story to. And then I have sponsors who it's a more professional relationship, but really, really helpful to have. And I think necessary and needed, especially for women in our industry.
I like that distinction between mentors and sponsors a lot, because it makes me think differently about the people in my life. And I agree with everything you guys have said. I've learned so much from not only you guys on this call, but some of the men that we work with every day. I feel very lucky to work with the peers that I work with every day. So this is helping me contextualize the way that the different people in my life have influenced me. And you said something interesting, Britt. You talked about the challenges that you've faced as a woman in the field, and the people that have helped you sort of overcome those challenges. I think something that we hear a lot, it's a little bit tropey, and I don't want to lean into that side of things, but the sacrifices you have to make as a woman in sports or a career woman. I know we have moms on this panel. We have people that have moved around the world for their jobs on this panel. And sacrifices have to be made for anyone in their career, not just women. But I am curious about the challenges you've faced and how you've overcome them. So I'm wondering if Elizabeth, maybe you could kick us off for that one.
Sure. And I'll tell you that I think when I think back now and like throughout my career, I have teenage boys, right? So for me, I thought the mom guilt would change. Like I really did. I thought that I could get through that challenge as my kids got older. And I'll be honest with you, it hasn't lessened, right? And now they're teenagers. And I think what I've learned instead is that first, it's really essential to work for an organization that values you both as like a mom and as an executive. And I say preferably in that order, because to me, that's what's so important, is surrounding myself in an organization that understands that I'm a mom first, and appreciates me for, being my whole self. And I think second, that just giving yourself some grace. Like life is really messy, and it's not perfect. There's like no perfect balance, and that's, I think, the challenge that a lot of us have faced. As there's several working moms on this call, right? And I think we all have faced that, right? That life is messy. There's no such thing as perfection, and I think we all try to strive for that, but it's honestly not possible, right? And so I've had the heartaches of rolling in late after dinner or being on a business trip and missing out on some milestones. But, I've also experienced a really full heart in terms of, being able to coach my son's running club and cheering my other son on during his basketball game, and just coming home and tackling algebra homework together, right? Or honestly, just simply connecting over conversation. And I think, it's a balancing act that all of us try to face on a daily basis. And it's definitely a challenge. But I'm honestly super grateful to work in an organization like the 76ers, where I'm appreciated for my whole self. I'm appreciated for being a mom. I'm appreciated for being an executive and not always having it all together. And I think being in an organization that surrounds you with that love is so important as you're continuing to, move along your career.
Yeah. And something I love that Elizabeth just said, she intimated to this a little bit, and I talk about all the time. Sometimes the greatest challenge to overcome is the pressure we put on ourselves. And I think a lot of people ask and talk about, how do you find work-life balance? Like work-life balance is this term that everyone talks about that I say all the time, like it doesn't exist. Like, I don't know why it's a term. I don't know why people talk about it. It's not a real thing. There's never going to be balance. What it is, it's like harmony, it's compromise. And you just have to, like, I love that Elizabeth said, give yourself grace. Like some weeks are going to be like work. We have 4 games this week. It's our first 4 games back with fans in the building. So like, I have a feeling a lot of us are going to be really focused on work, and we're going to be at the arena 4 nights. That means the next week we're away all week. We'll be home every night. I'll get to like put my boys to bed every night. Whereas this week I won't. And I think that's okay. And you just have to hope and know and like be at peace and focused and present on where you are, and realize that it's a harmony, and that some weeks are going to be more work and some weeks are going to be more family, and that's okay. And hopefully by the end, it all comes out even, but there's really, it's never perfect, and it's never balanced. There is not such a thing. It's just being like finding that harmony and being comfortable with where you are and every decision that you make. And having the confidence to make those decisions and know that it's okay. Like I was at the arena late last night. So you know what I did? I didn't start my morning until 10 so that I could like get on, like have the morning with my boys and get on the Peloton after. And I blocked my calendar. Block your calendar. It's okay. And I think it's important for people like us to do things like that, but do it loudly so that the younger like women and everyone at the organization know that it's okay. They can do that too. Block your calendar till 10. I don't care. Block your calendar at 5 o'clock at the end of the day. So you got to the yoga class. Like it's so important for you to do the things to take care of yourself, and that when you're working and you're focused and you're dedicated to it. And then when you're not, you're focused somewhere else.
And you don't have to be a mom to do that, right? Like I think blocking your calendar and figuring out how to find time for yourself is so important, because it will make you a better leader in your organization.
Definitely.
Well, Katie, doing it. Oh no, Brittany, you go.
I was gonna say, jumping on both of Katie and Elizabeth's mommy train from a sense of like my biggest challenge, because quite frankly, like I'm a newer mom, my daughter's 2, and in other organizations there were mothers and I didn't even know they were mothers, because it was kind of like nobody talked about it. They wanted to be about business. It was almost like they didn't address it or talk about it. So when I became a mom, I was like, what does this look like? How do I navigate work now? Like, is it okay to talk about my kids all the time? Because you know you want to, but it's also like trying to figure out, what is your culture? And so luckily, with the Philadelphia 76ers, like our culture is one that welcomes it. And I appreciate it so much. And I look at people like Elizabeth and Katie and Jillian, Laura Toscani Weems, Christine Steinberg, like all of these amazing rock star moms that we have in our organization really showed me like, yeah, we talk about our kids. Yeah, we block off our calendar when we have something to do. If I need to do something with my husband and my family, like I won't just say I'm busy, like I'll say what I'm doing, and that's okay. And it's such, like to Katie's point, it's such a great example to set for other women in the organization who may be thinking about starting a family, but not feeling like they'll be able to talk about it or share it or be proud of it or balance it. Or blend it. So the one thing that I thought of, like while Katie was talking, Dr. Amy Kimball, another rock star, an amazing woman in our organization, has left me with quite a few takeaways during the pandemic. One of them is like balance doesn't exist. It's about blending. It's a blend. And like sometimes you add more mom, sometimes you add more executive, sometimes you add more of yourself and like try to get away from everything else and just focus on you. And she really encouraged us in one session, I can't remember the name of it, to make 3 lists when you make a list. Like if you're a list maker, I am. And I always made like a personal list and a professional list. But my personal list was literally like things for the household, things for my kid, things for my husband, my family. And like there was never any time for me. So now you make a me list, a personal list, and a professional list. And like understanding that like selfish has such a negative connotation, but if you don't fill your cup up first, like you can't pour into others. And as women, we pour into everyone around us. And so many times we forget to pour into ourselves. And so like, if I were to encourage anyone to do anything, is like find time for yourself, be selfish, like an hour a day so that you can fill yourself up so you can continue to pour into others.
I'm finding listening to you guys. No. Do you want to go? Go ahead, Katie.
No, I was just this might take us on a totally different tangent, but I think what's really interesting too is that like, if there's anything that we can look back on from the pandemic and how this has changed, I think, look, we've been in an organization that has really like allowed us to and embraced our true selves always. But I think hopefully that what the pandemic will do is open this up to other people. Like I've been on Zooms where like my boss is literally on the Peloton and like we're having a meeting, but he's like, this is my only time to do it. So we're going to do both. I've been on a Zoom where like literally my son got on the Zoom and looked at Chris Heck, our president, and said, "Daddy?" And I was like, no, that's not your daddy. But like literally, I think everyone now has sort of gotten this insight into each other's lives. And, I think I am sort of much more like private about my life, just because it's who I am. And I'm not a big sharer about things, but like now it's like, I'm on calls all the time and like my kids are, because we have to, and so I think if anything, what this has done is really sort of made that more the norm and more acceptable, and people will feel more comfortable being themselves. Like literally, as I'm saying this, my husband is walking in, and I don't know if you can see him behind me. Like he's walking in and out because we share an office. Like this is life these days, and so I think everybody will be like hopefully more comfortable to be themselves and to sort of block that time and know that there's life outside of work, and we have to figure out how to do it all.
I want to echo that somewhat. I don't have children yet, but I think I've worked in environments where I've been the only female there in terms of in the performance or the athlete care department. And I always sort of felt, I guess probably the pressure came from myself more than anything, that I had to sort of keep up with all the men and, not show emotion, and had to just power on through and sort of pretend that I had it all together every day. And sort of echoing what Brittany says, like you need to fill up your cup. Like if you want to bring your best every day, there's sort of 2 questions I ask myself all the time is this the best decision for the team? And am I looking after myself? Because I think, and they're not mutually exclusive, because I think if I need to make the best decision for the team, then I need to look after myself first to make sure that I can make the best decision for the team. But also, I think from another perspective, there are a lot of women out there that potentially see, women in certain positions, and they think, oh, I could never do that. I don't, I'm too emotional, or I don't have the ability to sort of adapt the way they have adapted. So I think if we sort of you know, maybe expose ourselves a little bit more and a little bit more vulnerable, then we might actually open up the doors for them to think that, oh, okay, they are human, and maybe it is possible for me to sort of follow in their footsteps.
I found it really liberating to listen to that whole conversation. I'm probably going to expose myself a little too much here, but I have no work-life balance right now. Like, work is my life. I moved here for this job. I don't have a family yet. It's just me and my job. And trying to find that balance has been a bit of a struggle for me, but I've also enjoyed having work be my life. And I don't think there's a problem there either. I wanted to ask you guys a little bit more. A lot of you have brought up the theme of compromise, and we mentioned the theme of sacrifice. A lot of people on this call have moved from city to city, left behind families, left behind hometowns for their jobs. And I think 10, 20 years ago, women weren't doing that all that often. And now it's become really common. It's something I did a few years ago. Carmen, I want to come back to you because you've done it recently and for a very long distance. So what was it like leaving Australia, coming to Philly, adjusting to life here? And more importantly, what makes it worth it to you? Why do you love your job enough to make those types of sacrifices?
I mean, it's a good question. Yeah, like, I obviously have a partner back in Australia, and I think that's also a bit of an area that probably I think women struggle with. So it's very common for a man to sort of lead the way with his career, and the woman sort of follows. So it's a little bit different when a female moves, and then the decision has to be made, you know, when and if the partner follows. So that's still something that I'm sort of you know, navigating with him. Sorry, what was the second part of the question?
I was curious about what does make it worth it. What about this job made you excited to say, yes, I'm going to move around the world and pursue what I do?
I think in sports science, I mean, it's a very niche area. You know, there's only a certain number of positions in the world, really. And when a position comes up like this with a team like this, which just is, you know, has such an amazing history, like it's impossible to turn down. I mean, what an opportunity. I feel so grateful every single day. And, you know, there are 30 of these jobs in the country or in the world even, working in the NBA. So, I mean, it's obviously a big move, a big change, a new city, a new country, a new culture, and so on. But like, life's an adventure, so why wouldn't you? And then also, again, like, if it inspires anyone else to do the same, man or woman, then, you know, hopefully I've done that.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Annelie, do you have any thoughts on this theme of sort of compromise or sacrifice, or things that you might give up because you do love your job and because you do care about what you do?
Yeah, I think in general, like, when you do love what you're doing, it's never really a sacrifice, right? You just kind of, it's a part of it, sure. And like, when people ask you, you actually think about it then, but you don't in your day-to-day. Like, I'm never at home and I'm like, oh God, I worked 16 hours today. Like, all the sacrifice that I'm doing, it doesn't feel like that, because when I'm at work, it doesn't feel like I'm sacrificing anything, because I'm doing what I love. And you said, you know, you're working all the time right now and you love it. And I think as long as you are able to pour in, and you can still give to all the other things that you want to give to, whether that is your family or your friends or your hobbies, then that's fine. There's no rule book that says, like, this is the right amount of time for this job, or this is the right amount of effort for this person. And it's just about, like, what makes you feel good. And so I think all of the women on this panel, like, we've been really intentional about where we want to be in our careers and in our personal lives. And all, like, it's not a mistake that this group is together. It's like, we had the determination and the ambition and luck and opportunity to do it, and we're doing it, and it's exciting for us. And so, yes, it comes with a little bit of some things that, you know, might take a backseat every now and then, but at the end of the day, it's a decision that we made, and we're lucky enough to make those decisions every day to move forward and to be better and to advance for ourselves, for our colleagues, for future women and men that want to be in the sports industry and have these jobs, and do it better than us. So I think it's more about looking at it from that perspective. It's like, we're all incredibly lucky, and we work hard, and we have fun in the process, and we get to work in a really fun environment with a great company. And so it's a blessing for sure. And it doesn't really feel like, oh, a burden, or I'm missing out on something. Because when it does, I think that's the time when you walk away, because life is too short for that.
Wisdom. Anybody else have thoughts on sacrifice, compromise, what you've gained, what you've lost, anything?
I think I would just add to what Annaliese said. There was a point in my career, I don't want it to come across as like this rosy picture that's a straight line up, right? There's a lot of zigs and zags, and I'm sure if you explored with any of us, we could share with you. But there was a point in my career where I had taken a role with a very large organization on the West Coast. And it was one of my dream jobs. I had worked really hard to get to that position. And the organization wanted me to move to the West Coast, but it just wasn't possible. My husband had a job here on the East Coast, and we couldn't get it organized for both of us to be able to move west. And so I took the position, but I took it remote, and I was commuting between the East Coast and the West Coast every other week. And I did a week on the West Coast, a week on the East Coast, and went back and forth like that for about 6 months until I showed up at my house one day, and I had my teenager boys were 5 and 3 at the time. My 5-year-old said, sometimes I have a mommy and sometimes I don't have a mommy. And it just absolutely broke my heart. And my husband had been behind me the entire time. It was legitimately like a dream job. And he was making all sorts of sacrifices in order for me to go pursue this role. But at the end of the day, I realized that like I could be in my dream position, but it wasn't working for all the other facets of my life. And it certainly wasn't working for my 5-year-old at the time. And so I made a really hard decision to step away, to Annaliese's point. And that wasn't easy. It wasn't easy to say goodbye to something that I was so passionate about. But it's part of my journey, and it's part of where I am, how I got to where I am today, right? And sometimes you have to close one door and let another door open when all the puzzle pieces aren't fitting well together. So I think it's just important to realize that not all of us had this like beautiful straight trajectory that led us to where we are today.
This is a theme that I'd love to explore a little bit more. We've talked about balance in different ways, whether that's putting a calendar hold out there for yoga or for riding the bike, not for something essential or something that feels essential to you. The idea of leaving behind a job if it's not right for the balance of your life. So maybe to the younger women that are coming up behind you, women that haven't started their careers yet or that are hoping to advance in their careers, what advice do you have for keeping that balance? There are a lot of driven women in the field. I don't think drive and determination is the problem, but I do wonder about balance, and I wonder about how you find what's right for you in your life. Is there anything that you guys want to share about maybe advising folks to find balance?
I'll be honest, for me, it's don't think about it like that. And that's really, that might be a personal thing. And maybe some people are watching this and are like, wow, that's crazy advice. But when I was kind of coming up in my career and getting to the Sixers, like I just was so eager to do the job. And it was like, I didn't even think about anything else. I was like, I know where I want to be, and like that's the goal, and I'll do what it takes to get there. And that was the theme. It wasn't about like, okay, let me try to figure out how I'm going to really balance everything and like a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I was like, okay, I have the determination. I know where I want to be. I have people in my corner that will help me get there. So let's just do the work. And if we get there in 5 years, cool. If we, in my case, I got there a little bit faster, even better. But it's just do the work and like pour yourself into what you're passionate about, whether it is your job or your personal life. Just give it your all, and then you don't worry about balance. You don't worry about anything else. It just kind of falls together. And sometimes it's messy. Most of the time it's messy, and it looks like Elizabeth says, I think if you look at all of our resumes, it looks like the straight line, like, wow, these women killed it. Like they all like advanced so young in their careers, and they're just like, they made it. And it's not that. If you ask any single one of us, we could probably give you every other Tuesday where we're like, oh, this was a really tough time. But that's just it. It is what it is. Elizabeth said it. Life is messy. Jobs are messy. Careers are messy. But there's beautiful moments in between, and like that's what makes it worth it. So I would say don't worry about like trying to find the balance. Just like do.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree. And something I say a lot is, I think it's wonderful that when people come up and, you have calls with these kids who are like, oh, I want to be a GM one day. I'm like, well, that's great. Good for you. But I think something that's really important, similar to what Annelie said is be open-minded. Like you're not going to love every job. You're not. But what you learn from that is just as important as what you learn from the jobs that you love. It's all part of the process. It's never clean, it's never perfect. And I think being really open-minded to different opportunities that come your way is just as important as having that determination, because you learn so much more about the business, about what kind of manager you want to be, about what it's like to work on a team. You know, I look back at a time where I had a boss that wasn't great, and that taught me more about leadership and management probably than anything. And so I think, you know, to everyone's point, to echo it here, it's, you know, not to whatever, but it's trust the process. Like you learn from everything, from the good and from the bad. And it's all really important. But at the end of the day, to Annalie's point, you know, like do the work, be a sponge, like roll up your sleeves, and it's not going to be perfect, but it will all be part of getting to where you want to be.
Annelie, you said something that stuck with me. There are hard times and tough Tuesdays, but there are moments that make it worth it. We're going off book. This wasn't a question that we had really talked about prior to the panel, but I would love to hear from you guys. Do you have any flashbulb memories? It's something I think about a lot, and I think it's really important, especially this year when people are going through a tougher time at work, in life. I mean, it's been insane. So when you look back at the moments that have made it worth it, are there any that you guys can think of that you'd be willing to share?
There's so many for me, and it's like not even the big moments. I think when people ask that question, they're asking for like the championship moments, right? And for me, it's always the little things. Like when I worked in football, I always said it was about, you know, like having a tough conversation on a Monday after a loss with a player who was just not doing well, not feeling well, not the right headspace, and couldn't perform, and having conversations and working through things. And then on Sunday, everybody's there for the touchdown. On game days, everybody's there for the dunks. But like the moments that are not shown, the moments that aren't seen, those are the special ones to me. And like, yeah, I could tell you, like, I'm excited for the graduations that players had. I'm excited for, you know, moments in their lives where they made the all-star team or things like that. But it's, for me, really the little things that stand out the most, and the things that are, you know, treasured for me, that are just between a few people, that aren't like the big flashy things that you would read about. Those are the ones that are special to me, and probably the ones that are the reason why you keep going and keep doing this job.
No, it's absolutely true. I think when I think of flashbulb memories, of course, like you think about our first playoff win, or, you know, things like that. But, you know, I look back and have just as clear of a memory for, you know, of our 2013-14 season, of like sitting in the building with 3 of our colleagues, and we were like literally the only people in the building. You know, like you go back to some of our 10-win seasons, and those times and those experiences had just as much impact on me as it does today. And even, you know, I think what's been amazing to see too is I'm sure everyone can attest, as you go through your career, like some of my favorite moments too now have been seeing my colleagues succeed, seeing folks on my team who I've hired and helped grow. You know, someone who's very important to me just left the organization and got this huge dream opportunity. But that for me is a moment that is just as special, because he learned and grew so much and now is out in the world, you know? So I think it really changes as you go on. Of course, you know, we work in sports, so the wins, not the championships yet, but the playoff wins, like those certainly are those memories. But to Annalie's point, like it's the little things every day too. And it's times when it's not as great.
And I would echo what both of them have said, right? I, as a chief people officer, I spend a lot of my time coaching and supporting all of the people who work behind our organization, right? And someone who people come to when they're having a tough moment and need some support. And to Katie's point, like watching someone like that shine as they, you know, go through a growth opportunity for themselves and then come out the other side, just this incredible leader, that those little moments that are big moments for them and for me, you know, that's what makes, you know, having this role and just incredibly loving what I do every single day worth it. Is, you know, watching the talents, you know, of this organization continue to flourish.
I can jump in on the moments. Mine was more about like a decision that was definitely like sacrifice and scary, but was life-changing. And that was like taking the leap from Texas to Brooklyn, right? It was like I'm leaving my entire family. I'm going to this really new, crazy, busy, scary, really expensive place. I was very confused when I got up here because I thought I was going to be like, Sex in the City and rich. And it was not at all rich. It was subways and it was East Village apartments. It was crazy, but it was like a completely different lifestyle, a huge jump. But like my husband had come up here to work for the Yankees. That worked out. And then all of the opportunities and all the people that I've met and all the relationships that I've built over the 9 years that I've been on the East Coast were literally life-changing. But that was a moment like trying to make that decision and determine if I was going to make the jump and really move and leave behind like the life that I knew for the unknown, was a really scary but also transformative time in my life. And I learned so much about myself, about others, and it was like, that is a moment for me that I remember.
These are my favorite things to hear. So thank you so much for sharing those. We are starting to wrap up. My hope is that all of you can answer this question, but I know how busy everyone is. If anyone has 11:30 meetings, just to put in context what time it is as we're filming this, please hop off if you need to. I will give you an outro if you need it. My last question is one that you've probably been asked before, but I am curious about your answers. What is your hope for women in sports in the future? What do you hope for the next generation of female executives in sports? Let's sort of go around the horn here. Annelie, do you mind starting?
Yeah, for sure. I think my hope kind of ties into what Carmen said earlier, where she was talking about, when she first started in this, it was a lot about trying to match like male counterparts and like how they behaved and their emotions or lack thereof, or toughness, all of those things. And I think for me, it's as we're seeing females, women kind of taking over sports and other industry, and it becomes more normalized in a sense, and certainly more normal than it even was when I started in sports. My hope is that women become more comfortable in just being who they are, and that they no longer go into these jobs walking through the door and saying, okay, I have to put on this persona, this tough girl or persona that is just not who they really are. If you are tough and all that, that's great. And all women are tough in general, tougher than we like to believe in ourselves. But for me, it's about what women bring to an organization, any organization, certainly a sports environment, is unique and special. And there is few of us right now, and there's no need to mask who we are, because at the end of the day, what we contribute makes an organization, a team, a company better because of who we are as people and not who we're trying to be. And I think that for women, that is an important thing to constantly remember. You don't have to try to be anybody else, because there's no need for that. You are who you are, and that is why people want you around in an environment. And if you're not seen as that, then it's time to move on. So I think finding yourself and being true to who you are in your career is equally as important as it is in your personal life. And then just sticking to it, and know that your worth is not going to be determined by anybody else other than yourself, and sticking to what you know to be true.
So well said. I think she probably just spoke for all of us. I think, unfortunately, because I do have to be one of those people to outro at 11:30, the only thing I'll add is I hope that it just becomes commonplace. Like, I hope that while I love spending time on a panel with all of you, I hope the next time we're on a panel, it's talking about our jobs and what we do every day and how we've, filled the building last night, or what Brittany did to bring the work. Like, we should be talking about what we do because we're the best at what we do. It's not about whether we're female or male. So I hope it becomes commonplace, and that, young women in the industry aren't having to listen to panels about being a woman in the industry, but are listening to panels about being the best at what they do, no matter who you are.
Yes, Katie.
Brittany, want to go next?
Well, Annaliese said everything, literally everything, and it was so beautifully said. I guess the one thing I could add is similar to Katie, is like, right now we're still celebrating the first woman to do this, first woman to do that. And every time I see those, while it's like exciting, I'm also like, really? Like, are we still celebrating the first of things? Like, this is crazy. So my hope is that we get all the first out the way, and that it just becomes like, wow, that's amazing, or wow, that's, she's a phenomenal leader. And it's not a surprise that she is the CMO or the CEO or whatever the title is. My hope is that the firsts are out of the way very, very soon. And to Katie's point, it's normalized, it's commonplace, it's celebrated just because they are the best, not the best woman, but the best in the industry.
Carmen, you want to go?
Yeah, look, I'll echo what everyone has said so far. I think that's so great. And I think inherently women sort of potentially lack confidence in the workplace, and they, what Annelie said was, don't let anyone else sort of value you. You decide how much you're worth and so on. So I think if you just back yourself, if women just start backing themselves a little bit more and just having that confidence that they can reach those positions and so on, I think that will make a world of a difference. Because at the moment, I think there was a study that said that women only apply for jobs that they fit 100% of the criteria, whereas men apply for jobs where they fit only about 60%. So, have trust in your ability. It's all about attitude and aptitude. So just back yourself a little bit more. And I just hope that women going forward sort of just to have a little bit more confidence.
Elizabeth, can you bring us home?
Sure, and I don't know that I could top anything that anyone else has said here. They've all just put such a brilliant bow on this matter. But I think a couple of things to add would be, don't compromise who you are, don't compromise your values. Particularly, I think in an industry that's, where you're going after that team, that logo, don't compromise who you are just to put that logo on your resume. Hold out and join an organization that accepts you for your whole self. I think a lot of us have shared that today about how much, we're grateful and feel, so blessed to work in an organization that does that for us. But that should be commonplace, right? And I think that's what a lot of us have shared today, is that it shouldn't be novel, that we're all accepted as the leaders of who we are in our organization. That should be no longer novel, and it should just become, to me, pretty commonplace. I mean, we've had, for all that 2020 brought, right? 2020 brought a lot of really powerful moments for women in sports, right? We saw across basketball, football, baseball, both at the collegiate and also at the professional level, women doing amazing things in coaching, playing at the collegiate level in football. Who would have ever thought? That was just incredible. And, and managing teams at a general manager level, right? But I, like many and all of us have said, I look forward to a time when this isn't novel anymore, right? And that similar to other male-dominated industries, and many of us have worked in them outside of sports, that we have watched the ceilings, get broken, and we want that to continue to happen, right? Continue to see women take on these roles, and it, to no longer be, something that's celebrated because it's, to Brittany's point, the first time that someone has held that, right? What we should be doing instead is celebrating how incredible it is that we're all getting to do it together.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you, everybody, for sharing everything that you've shared today. I've been really inspired by this. I feel very privileged to have hosted you all for this conversation. I hope that next time I host each of you for a conversation, it's like Katie said, it's about your job and how wonderful you are at what you do, and not about your gender. But it has been a privilege to talk about being women in the field. I really appreciate all of you on a personal level. I appreciate you on a professional level. So thank you for doing this, and I will see you guys soon.